Hi everyone, this is Marcia, your host for these amazing stories from people protecting our planet. I wanted to thank you, our listeners, for all your support because you too play a very important role in protecting our planet as well. And I am excited. This next episode puts us over 50 episodes. Yay! These would not happen without your continuing support. And I just wanted to quickly mention before letting you hear our next episode with Monika Egerer, who is working on some urban garden projects here in Santa Cruz, California, that I will be on summer break and will resume episodes in 4 to 5 weeks. I am honored with a great lineup of people for the fall, so stay tuned and keep listening. Maybe get caught up on some of those older episodes that you haven't listened to yet. And please, if you can, I'm kind of begging if you can, but only if you have time, please leave a rating or review on iTunes. They help keep the podcast going and allow these inspirational stories to get into more ears. And that's what we need, is more ears to hear these stories and get more people involved with our conservation efforts and protecting this planet. So thank you for all you do and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Be Provided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa. Here are your hosts.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Be Provided Conservation Radio. I'm excited about our guest today, Monika Egerer. And I've been waiting to speak to someone like her for a while to talk about urban gardening and agro-ecosystem biodiversity. And I'm so happy that we found her. And she is a PhD candidate at UCSC, which is the University of California, Santa Cruz. And her research covers a broad range, really, community ecology, agroecology, and geography. And she's currently working on 3 different projects that I hope we get a chance to talk about today. One of the projects is the ecology of urban gardens, and also a film, which sounds really interesting, called No Place to Grow, which I believe is about Latino farmers saving some green space, right, for upcoming gentrification possibly in their community, and another project called the ecology of bird loss. So welcome to the show, Monika. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about what you have going on and what you're doing with all the urban garden work, and the film work sounds amazing as well. So yeah, thank you. Before we get started into some of the science stuff and your projects, I was just wondering how, growing up, have you always been passionate about being outside and in nature and gardening in particular?
Yeah, so I think that I grew up a lot spending time outside. I grew up in Michigan, and
me too.
Yeah, outside, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
In Traverse City. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I grew up outside of Ann Arbor, and then later south of Detroit, and I spent a lot of summer just running around in the forest by my house and the creeks by my house. In the wintertime, you are on the ice skating or. Yeah, trying not to injure yourself.
Exactly.
Yes, on the ice. So I think I had a passion for being outside and being in nature from a very young age, and my mother really fostered that as well. I think one of her idols was Rachel Carson, and so she is a very passionate environmentalist, and she passed that along to me. And so growing up, I was always interning at the Nature Conservancy, whether it was trail maintenance or doing citizen science with the youth. And so I spent a lot of time and a lot of my extracurricular time outside and learning about the ecology of ecosystems. And so when I got to college, I went to Kalamazoo College. I knew I wanted to be in the sciences. I was interested in biology, and I didn't really know necessarily that much about ecology and the environmental sciences, because in high school you're kind of given like a very...
It's a real broad...
Yeah. So I knew that, in my extracurricular time, I loved to be outside, and I loved collecting insects and learning about what they were called and what certain plants were called, and bird watching, and just learning about nature, how it worked.
Nice.
And so I had a really amazing professor in college that provided me the opportunity to do my own research project. And so for that project, I spent the summer chasing butterflies in western Michigan, in grasslands and in forest ecosystems, and learning how vegetation structure influenced the butterfly communities in Michigan. And so I think for the first time, I understood how research and how ecology can be a rigorous field. It's not just, it's more than just being outside and appreciating nature. It's trying to understand the nuances of interactions between species, and it was a very enlightening experience for me, I think, as a young person. So after having that little taste of doing research and doing field work in ecology and in community ecology, I started to think more seriously about doing research in an environmental field, and I was really interested in ecology, and one of the programs that was offered the next year was it was a program it was called International Sustainable Development Studies, but it was kind of a program that was very interdisciplinary, thought about ecology and conservation, but also social dimensions of ecology and political ecology.
This was in Kalamazoo?
So that the program was offered through Kalamazoo College, and it was in Thailand.
Oh.
So I had my next, I think, significant experience as a young person was going to Thailand. And we did field courses, so we would spend weeks out backpacking or staying with communities, living on small farms, helping our host families with things like rice shucking and rice harvesting.
What an experience.
Yeah. And also looking at biodiversity within agroforestry systems. Yeah. And so I think for me that was the first time that I was really exposed to agroecology, and to think about how biodiversity is not just important in what we may consider a natural space or a forest or a wildland, but also it's really important in agricultural systems.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to document how many tree species were in an agroforestry plot, and also learn about how people are utilizing those trees to provide food or fiber for their families.
Interesting.
So that then became a very fascinating aspect of ecology to me, is how we think about biodiversity and how we think about the social dimensions of ecosystems and how we manage them.
Oh, yeah.
In I guess the broad scope of ecology as a field.
Yeah, you've mentioned a couple times the community ecology, so that's very important. It seems, that kind of brings it all together with the people and the social dynamic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. Too is I participated in this Ecology of Bird Loss project for my undergraduate thesis. That work was, I guess, a more rigorous research experience. And
was that in Thailand, or was that?
So that was on the Mariana Islands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I went back out there again during my PhD work here in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
And we excitedly just finally finished the project, and we published this paper about our findings. But that was the first time that I think I did both natural and social science research. So I was looking at what are the implications of bird loss for a plant that grows in the forest, but is also harvested by people. Yeah. So it's not just it has this, or what we were thinking, it has this mutualism with birds as a seed disperser, and it's also used by people in food. It's a hot pepper. So I've given it away already.
Love hot peppers, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So going from the seed and how it affects the plant and how it affects the people if that's not there.
Yeah. And if you know much about Guam and the Mariana Islands, Guam has lost most of its bird populations due to the invasion of the brown tree snake. And so in the 1940s or 50s, the brown tree snake came to Guam in military cargo, and the population just exploded, mostly through its ability to prey on species that had no natural predator like that before. So it lives in the trees, as its name implies, as do many of the birds that are on Guam that feed on fruits and are very important for dispersing fruits throughout the forest.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah,
so the trees or the tree snakes are actually going after like baby birds possibly, or are they going after the fruit too, or both?
They eat the adult birds and the baby birds as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to control on an island, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have had not that much success with trying to control the snake population. There's been a lot of efforts, and the efforts are still ongoing. But I think that this is an unfortunate model system, or an accidental model system, to understand what the importance of mutualistic relationships between, for example, birds and plants are. And so, we found that birds that were, that chili seeds that were consumed by birds germinate and survive at a higher rate than, at a faster rate and a higher proportion than seeds that are left within a fruit or that are just, depulped by hand. So it shows that there is a benefit of birds consuming at least in this case, chili seeds, to the plant, and that means
it goes through them and out.
I think it's like taking off all the gooey stuff from the skin. It maybe adds something to the seed. So sometimes like gut passage by birds or by a seed disperser is very important for scarification of the seed. So, or just even getting the seed to a new place, away from competitors. I guess I'll follow up with that we also talked to a lot of folks that were using the chili plant, so going into the forest and harvesting it. And we found that, where people had historically found chilies on Guam, they were much less, we could not find them.
Wow.
And places where people told us that they had gone before in recent years, we also couldn't find the plant.
Wow.
So it does suggest, through both our experiments and through going out and doing field surveys, that there is a likely relationship between birds and chilies, and birds being important for chili population survival on the islands.
Interesting.
So
I never thought of that relationship. Yeah.
I think this is telling us that birds are providing an ecosystem service or a benefit to people.
Yep.
Because people are utilizing these plants for food, there's a cultural value associated with the chili and spicing up your food.
Yeah, it's probably a staple there for that.
Yeah. So I think through that work, I started getting really passionate about doing more interdisciplinary research. And I also knew that I was interested in going to grad school. I had a very influential researcher, postdoc that I worked with there, and for the first time was kind of asked, so when are you going to grad school? And are you going to grad school? Yeah. So I think for me that was a very, very enlightening experience, as was the past experiences that I'd had. So when I was presenting that work at a conference, that's when I met my current advisor, and I looked into what she was doing, and to be honest, I was like, I'm not an urban person. I'm interested in ecology. I'm interested in agroecology, but I don't know much about cities.
Yeah.
I don't know much about urban ecology, but I'm really interested in things like pest control and biodiversity conservation and pollination, and thinking about how in some system or in agroecosystems, these are social ecological systems. So many of these interactions are important for society. So I applied to work in her lab and be a grad student with her, and I didn't really think it was going to happen. I was like, I'll apply to one or two places. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But of course, I came out here and visited and was very blown away by the beauty of Santa Cruz, as is everyone.
Yeah. And I should mention we are sitting at Natural Bridges Park right now in a beautiful setting with the ocean and the breeze and the sun.
Yeah.
And you'll hear some occasional, probably ravens and crows behind us, but yeah.
Exactly.
So you got enamored with Santa Cruz, California?
Yeah, I was sold, I guess. I was sold. I never lived in California.
Yeah.
It took me, I would say, about 2 years to really understand Californian society. But it's been really good. And I think here's where I've started to learn about a different kind of agroecosystem, those in urban environments where they're surrounded by often total concrete impervious cover, but yet they harbor stunning amounts of biodiversity within them. And these are managed by many different people. And so many different people and communities of people are responsible for, or not fully responsible, but they're very much responsible for conserving the biodiversity within these habitats.
That's amazing.
And there's also a lot of really fascinating ecological interactions happening within urban gardens and farms. And
can I ask?
Of course,
UCSC is your advisor's name? I didn't catch. Is her program like one of the leading urban garden programs in this area for Santa Cruz, or is that okay to ask?
Yeah, that's of course is okay to ask. Yeah. So I should take a step back and give her way more respect than I have. So I work
we'll get there.
that I have so far. So I work with Stacy Philpott, and she is an agroecologist and community ecologist in environmental studies at UCSC. And over the past 5 or 6 years, I guess it started in 2012, and she's a professor there. And she has started this really amazing, this research program in understanding urban garden ecology. Okay. And so much of the framework that we I guess subscribe to or use in our research is that there's both the importance of local management as well as the surrounding landscape for influencing biodiversity, ecosystem processes, and ecosystem services in urban gardens. And so that's why, because the landscape is very important, we work across the California Central Coast. And so we work in 25 sites from San Jose down to Carmel.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
Are these big plots? How big is the average size?
Yeah, so most of them are about maybe... one of our sites, for example, is Chadwick Garden, if you've been there before, and Tuscany Community Garden, which is in Santa Cruz, as well as the Beach Flats.
Yeah.
So they're about, half an acre or no more than that. Yeah, so they're pretty small.
Yeah. I was just trying to get an idea of how much these 25 sites of area you're managing, how much area. Yeah. So there's about, I would say around, I think one of our biggest sites, there's about a little more over 100 gardeners that have a plot there. Wow.
Yeah, so some of these sites are big, and some of them are relatively small, where it's just about 20 families.
Okay.
So they really vary in a bunch of local characteristics as well as the surrounding landscape. So some of them, as you can imagine, are those that are in San Jose have a lot of urban land around them, whereas in Monterey, there's a lot of agricultural land around these sites.
Right. Totally different kind of ecosystems too, though. Here in Santa Cruz, you have a lot of coastal stuff and inland stuff on the San Jose side. So we've, I think, documented about 60 species of bees in these sites. We've documented about 18 species of ladybugs, and I think I read you specialize in ladybugs.
I love ladybugs. It's my specialty, my model system.
Yeah.
So these sites are really fascinating, and I think you can ask endless questions in them. And so Stacy has really, I think, she's created a really strong research program, and it's supported by the USDA and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and it's a grant in sustainable agriculture. So.
How do these get started? You mentioned 100 people or, several different families working on these. Do they just get together and say, hey, we're going to start this little urban garden on this plot of community land, or, do they have to file for certain permits, or, I don't know how it works. Yeah.
So I think urban agriculture generally faces a lot of challenges with land land security and land access. So often many community gardens, start when a community sees the opportunity to use a piece of maybe vacant land or unused land, and they may be interested in starting something like a garden for both sustenance, for food, as well as just a community space. And that can often, lead to really great things and transform neighborhoods, and there's a lot of social capital that's been documented that come out of urban garden projects.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think a great example that maybe I'll talk about more later is like the Beach Flats Community Garden in Santa Cruz, where that garden used to be this kind of like the neighborhood dump, and there was a lot of crime associated with the area, with that area in the neighborhood. And the gardeners the community, the neighborhood, basically petitioned to have a garden. And that has, I think, become a very safe space in the neighborhood and a really important place for just socializing and community. And
that's great. Is it producing food, or is it more of a floral, nice place to go to sit and, wander and walk through? Or is it both? There's food there and flowers, or it's mostly, I would say, for food production. But there are many flowers as well. And it's also a place to hang out. So they're very multifunctional. It's hard to, And so most of the gardens that we work in, we work only in community gardens. So we don't really work in home gardens. And most of them are designed for food production and usually organic food production. So that's why also conserving biodiversity is very important, because most of the gardeners are not allowed to use pesticides or insecticides and synthetic things to protect their plants against pests. So it's actually very important that we have natural enemies around, like ladybugs, like parasitoid wasps. I wanted to ask you about the bugs, and the biodiversity. Good, So do these naturally come in, or do you introduce, ladybugs into these settings to start kind of boost it, or do the plants that you're planting naturally bring these in?
So I mean, what we study for the most part is just the natural occurring biodiversity. So we don't, unless, and I can talk about that, which I did last summer. I did do an experiment where I introduced a bunch of ladybugs to see how local factors and landscape factors may influence the fidelity of ladybugs to a site, so how long they might stay in that habitat. But for the most part, we're just observing what biodiversity is there and how practices that gardeners are using. So what agroecological practices that gardeners are using, whether they're planting more flowers, whether they're using different ground cover amendments, so mulching, putting straw down, grass cover cropping, things like that, how that may influence the biodiversity or conserve the biodiversity within a garden.
Interesting.
So we know that for some insect groups or arthropod groups that certain factors are very important, whereas for other groups that factor is not so important. So we know that like leaving bare ground or bare soil around is very important for ground nesting bees. So it's not just, we know that floral or flower availability is also very important for bees.
Right.
But certain bee species do nest in the ground, and so creating little habitat niches within your garden ecosystem is also very important for conserving different species of bees.
Interesting. So do you educate the farmers or the gardeners? I guess they're more gardeners, I guess, in this, on what's happening, or are you just observing what they're doing and how it's happening? Are they educated before they start any of this, I guess, is my... So this past summer, we also started to investigate, what is the learning experience of, or what was the gardening experience of folks in, it's hard. I always say, I'm like farmers, gardeners, because some of them identify themselves as farmers, and some of them identify themselves as gardeners, and some people are just like, I don't know, I'm just trying to learn and grow things. I just want to eat some food I grow.
Exactly. I'm welcome to any kind of name that people want to call themselves, but for the sake of this, we'll just say gardeners. So we have started to learn a little bit more about who the gardeners are and their experience and how that may influence the types of plants that they grow and how they may manage for pests or disease. And we also compile an annual report every year. So based on the experiments that we did, the previous summer, we usually release a report in early January or February. After, each team member is like responsible for doing an analysis and writing up a little paragraph, all right, write up like your summary of what you did this past summer and what can gardeners take away?
Yeah.
What's an important finding from this?
Good.
From this study. And so we provide that back to the managers and they send that out to the gardeners.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And
Great.
We also have this website that hosts all of our reports from every year. And yeah, I'm responsible for it, kind of, and I'm really not that tech savvy, and so I wish I could make it very beautiful and interactive, and I see these websites sometimes, and I'm so blown away by how amazing they are. But
I know, I'm with you there.
Yeah, so it's
Mine's
there.
Always very basic. Yeah.
It's like these are some facts about ants, about beetles, about bees.
Your website's very nice, actually. I was going to put a link to that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's got to be hard, especially with all the research you're doing too, and getting out in the field, and it's got to be kind of a love-hate thing to sit down in front of the computer and try to figure that out. I would think, so. But how many people are on your team? Is it Stacy is the director there?
Yeah, she's the principal investigator, the PI, and we have a research associate, Peter Bichier, and he is really, we could not have all these sites without him because he maintains communication with the garden managers. Just last week, I went out with Peter and we checked all the lock combinations just to make sure we could still get into the sites.
Oh, yeah.
We communicate, we try and reach back out to them and say, hey, we're about to start field work. Let us know if there's any changes or anything we should be aware of. And also, if you haven't read our report from last year, here it is. So,
good.
Yeah, so those two people are really what keep the balls rolling. And then we also have 3 co-PIs that are across the world, I guess I should say. One of the investigators she lives in Australia, and she's a scientist with CSIRO, which is basically our equivalent to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, or like the science organization. Okay. And she is really interested in learning about climate mitigation and water use and conservation in the gardens. And then we have another co-PI, Shalini Jha, who is an expert in pollination. And she studies, the importance of local management and landscape surroundings for bee communities and pollination services. So thinking about last summer we monitored, tomato plants and counted how many flowers went to fruit as an indication of pollination effectiveness.
Nice.
Yeah. And then we also monitor the bee populations.
Yeah, I was going to say you're counting the bees and the bugs too. Yeah.
And then we have one more co-PI, and that is Heidi Leary, and she is, along with Stacy, very interested in natural enemy communities. So like I was saying, those parasitoids and ladybugs, and also in pest control. Yeah. And so they're interested in learning about the interactions between herbivores, or often our pests, and their predators or parasitoids, and how different garden management factors, as well as the context that the garden is in and the landscape, may affect the ability of these good insects, these beneficial bugs, to protect your plants against herbivores.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have a lot going on with the Urban Garden Project. I think that's great. Have you guys ever thought of this going out into like a bigger farm area and bigger agricultural areas?
Yeah.
Or you constantly, it seems like if this could work on a much larger scale and get pesticides down and all that, yeah.
I think when we gardens are highly diversified systems, and I think that we can learn a lot from them. They're very heterogeneous in what they're planting because your neighbor might be planting something completely different from you, or very similar. I don't know how much you share with your neighbor maybe is the key. But I think that we can learn a lot from small scale agricultural management, and also I think a great lesson is to think to really value these small-scale agroecosystems. They are providing. Gardeners reporting sometimes 20 kilos that they harvest every week in the summer
Wow.
of food.
Wow.
That is enough to feed not just your household sometimes, but maybe your neighbors as well as your coworkers.
Exactly, or take to the farmer's market or something. Yeah. That's great.
They are very important ecosystems, not just for the biodiversity that I've been talking about, but I think that they can contribute to feeding urban populations in a way that might reduce the need for such large-scale agriculture.
And I know we will probably never get away from that, but there's just so many people to feed and such. I'm glad you mentioned, because you did talk about some challenges and some successes with those, and I think that's great. You talked about the success with the beach flats area. Any other successes you've seen that really come to mind with the other areas that you're looking at?
There have been. I mean, I think maybe start with the challenges so we don't have to end on it. I think for many garden organizations, it's really challenging to maintain land, and especially in places like San Jose.
Yeah.
Like, we lost one of our sites recently this year. We just found out that, we went last week and it was completely bulldozed.
Really, for development?
Yeah, so it's going to be...
So they don't tell you, they don't come and warn you or anything?
Surprisingly, we hadn't been warned, and this was a city Parks and Recreation garden, one of our bigger sites.
Wow.
Also very important for many of the immigrant populations in the area. And so I think that was very challenging, because we see successes like the beach flats. And I don't know necessarily that much about this site that was just lost, I guess I should say. I don't know necessarily if there was a fight for it or not. It might have just been, this was city land, and sorry,
we're going to build something.
Yeah, this is in a very high land value area in San Jose, where prices are skyrocketing, right? I mean, it's kind of a crazy time to be. California is a beautiful place, but it's also very challenging to own land, and especially for community gardens, where a lot of these benefits that gardens provide, whether it's an ecological benefit or a social benefit to the people using that space, it's not necessarily quantified by the city, or it's kind of this, it's just this external thing that is not necessarily being accounted for.
Yeah.
And so that makes it really challenging for, I think, the city sometimes to say, oh, we have this proposition for something to be developed here and make a profit off of this land immediately, than to keep it as a green space and as a habitat in the city. So I think that those are some of the challenges with urban agriculture, and many studies have also documented, the fight that people put up to try and save these spaces, because they have this a lot of people are very attached and get a lot of benefits from them.
Yeah,
and don't want to see them leave from their neighborhoods. So I think that those are, we've seen a lot of challenges over the years that gardens face. Doing research in that kind of environment is also very challenging, because, we face this question of, okay, do we reach out and get another site and scramble and get another site to work in?
Yeah.
Like to meet our, meet 25 gardens? Or do we just say, okay, well, that's kind of the nature of
that's how it happens.
Of working in this kind of environment.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to replace it this year, and we just will go on doing our research. But that's definitely a research challenge, is that all of these sites are very, their longevity is, it's unknown. And
scary.
So, we kind of, even though we want to be, we can't be attached to sites.
Yeah.
And although it's a benefit to work in sites over years, and I think that's, in ecology, that's been the most way that we've gained insight about ecology, and a lot of the ways that ecological theory has evolved out of long-term research.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the only way you're really going to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That being said, there are a lot of, I think that the beach flats case, even though it was not necessarily the ideal situation, I think for a community to come together and to save that space was very empowering. I think for me as an individual, and I think for hopefully for the city as a whole.
Yeah.
And this is not just a space that is used by a handful of gardeners, but every time I'm there, I see people just walking in. They bring their kids to play, to teach their kids about plants, to teach their kids about insects. So it is not just, it's not an isolated space, even though sometimes gardens seem as these isolated pockets of habitat or biodiversity or of green, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
There's a lot of benefits, spillover benefits, that I think that, need to be studied. I have not done research on those spillover benefits necessarily, but just from my own observations and experience, I think I as an individual have gained a lot from spending time in those spaces.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, they're great spaces, and
Yeah.
I just love we just have a small garden, and I just love going out, and it just causes that nice calming feeling anyways. But yeah, so that could be a whole nother research project for somebody to get involved with on that. So nice. Well, it sounds like a good project, I think. And I wanted to ask you, because I know we're running a little bit over time a little bit, but I don't want to keep you too long. But I wanted to ask you about the No Place to Grow film and how you got involved with that, and if you can tell our listeners a little bit more about that. It sounds really interesting from what I've read. I don't know if it's available to see, or how can people access that if possible?
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited to talk about this project, and it kind of leads or comes out of what I was just talking about. So No Place to Grow is a documentary film project by Michelle Aguilar, and I've been helping out with it over the past now 4 years, which is kind of crazy to say.
It's a long process.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah.
But it documents the struggle that the Beach Flats gardeners faced in keeping the garden.
Okay.
And
I didn't realize
also,
it was the Beach Flats. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And documents the importance of that space for them, as well as just the agrobiodiversity of the space. Mm-hmm. And so in partner with that, we're going to be having, that film's released. So the film will be released to the community in September.
Oh, great.
At the Museum of Art and History in Santa Cruz. And along with that release of the film, we're going to be releasing this exhibition or an archive in the MA, in the Museum of Art and History.
Nice.
That hosts photos that community members have taken of the garden, of its plants, of its bugs, of its people.
Nice.
And also we'll highlight stories of those people and what the garden means to them. And so that's something that I've tangentially talked about, but gardens provide, a suite of well-being benefits. And so our lab has studied this as well, and that's what we learned a lot about last year. Okay. And so this kind of takes a very micro perspective and looks at how those gardeners in the Beach Flats are managing the space. Mm-hmm. It talks about their agroecological history and their practices, and then also they discuss what the garden means to them.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
So we're really excited about that, and we've been working with the MA to put that into place. So that'll be in the in the history section of the museum, and there'll be an opening, and hopefully the film will be then shown outside in Abbott Square.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. And we have a website also if folks want to keep in touch. I don't know how many listeners are from Santa Cruz or listening from all over.
We have quite a few actually,
so it would be wonderful to see folks out to support and learn about the garden and about this project. And I have to give a lot of kudos to Michelle Aguilar, who is the film director. She is such I don't know, artist sounds like such a funny word, but she is an artist, right?
Yeah.
So she has done an excellent job of trying to capture this place and the stories of these people. And then I'm also working with Michelle Glawa, who is a professor at it's like CIIS in San Francisco, the Center for Integral and international studies.
I know what you're talking about.
I always forget the acronym. Yeah. And so she has done a lot of research in the garden over the past, I would say, decade or so.
Wow.
And so she's worked really hard to capture the gardener stories on film. And so we're working together to put all these pieces together and to highlight how this is just one example of an agro-ecosystem in an urban landscape that has really struggled to exist, but is continuously important for not just our city ecosystem, but for our city community. So thinking about all different kinds of, all facets of the population are using and learning and benefiting from this green space. And so I think like through this exhibition, we really want to say, and through this film, I think just putting that out there to the community, and hopefully it's well received.
Oh, I can't imagine it not being well received. I think that's great. I think it'll, Well, I look forward to that. So we can have people look up on the website, and we'll post that in the show notes, and any other links, just send them to me and I'll post them. And then we can, do you have the URL to the website? Can you say it so people can hear it?
Should just be, so the film should just be noplacetogrow.com.
Okay.
And then we also have, and I think that the MA will also have that up on their website.
Okay.
And then our Urban Garden website, where you can learn more about our research if you're interested, is just urbangardenecology.com.
Okay.
And I apologize if the website is not as snazzy. One day it will be.
It's nice. It's nice. Well, it shows that you're busy out in the field, but it's very nice. It's nicely done. A lot of nice photos on there from what I've seen. So
thanks.
Good information. So, well, thank you. And just one more major question, I think, unless there's more, anything that I may have missed, but I always ask this loaded question at the end to ask people, what gives you hope? I'm trying to provide hopeful stories to get people motivated to do more and to participate. So what gives you hope for our future?
Oh, yeah, that is a very tough question.
I know, especially in this age of negative news lately.
Yeah. I think what gives me hope is, I think interacting with people gives me hope that we can continue to be passionate about our environment, about learning about how ecosystems work so that we can better protect them. I am hopeful that humanity is is able to confront the challenges that face our globe. I think also just being outside and watching things fly past me, learning about things and knowing that ecosystems can be incredibly resilient, but that also people are very excited about learning. So I think some gardeners are a great example of many are very passionate and very interested in learning about ecology and agroecology and agrobiodiversity and what they can do. And I think that always gives me hope. Even though, sometimes on our way to those sites or on our way back from those sites, we see miles and miles of like dust fields of what will soon be strawberries or broccoli or something.
So, artichokes or something,
I think that there is always hope in these kind of landscapes, and doing the work that I do and doing work that is very entwined in community health and well-being is hopeful and gives me it's a reason to get up every day for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I think there is hope in that. I agree. Yeah. I think people want to do the right thing, and education is key on that too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for listening to the listeners.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are interested in this topic. I've gotten questions about it since starting, so I was glad that Colby introduced us.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
Have a good one.
Yes. Good luck.
Thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio.